All right, we're going to call the meeting to order. Thank you all for being here with us in Lander. Just a reminder to please silence your cell phones. As always, any that go off are an automatic $50 contribution to the Wildlife Fund. We appreciate your help with that. Let's do roll call. Commissioner Bell.
Present.
Commissioner Haskell.
Present.
Commissioner Jolovich.
Present.
Commissioner Mai.
Present.
Commissioner Masterson.
Present.
Commissioner Roberts.
Here.
All right, wonderful. We have quorum. Members of the public who would wish to address the commission on any agenda item, please fill out a comment form located at the registration table and hand it to one of the department staff who will forward it up here to us. Assisting with the meeting today is Renee Schell from the Lander Regional Office. Thank you, Renee, for helping us out. If you are participating via Zoom, you should have submitted an advanced comment form prior to the start of the meeting. But if you'd still like to comment on an agenda item, please contact the host of the meeting. As we work through the agenda, the public will have the opportunity to address the commission. To ensure that everyone has the opportunity to speak, and as a courtesy to others, please do limit your time. And just a reminder to everyone using a microphone, when you see red, that means your mic is hot, including those who will be up speaking up front. Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, let's start by looking at commission meeting minutes from the open session in July. Hope everyone had a chance to review those. If so, do I have a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Any comments, questions, edits need to be made to those minutes at all? All right, all those in favor of approval?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes. Director Bruce.
President Lumval, commissioners, glad to be with you today here in Lander. For my director's report, I want to say that this last month and a half has really been a lot of engagement, both with legislators, our congressional folks, and with other states. First of all, I'd like to talk about an opportunity I had due to Senator Lummis invited me to speak with her this summer on the Western Caucus Foundation policy meeting up in Whitefish, Montana. Great opportunity, definitely a new experience for me, but it was an opportunity to influence and have a discussion with other Western congressional delegation as well as their staff. We really focused on grizzly bear delisting and ESA reform. So good, a few days discussion up in Montana. I wanted to provide you, as I seem to always do, provide an update on the Bureau of Land Management, the BLM Sage Grouse Amendment, and where we are to date. We're getting very close now. I actually can maybe give you more of a solid timeline that we'll see a decision by the end of this year. Currently out for notice of public comment is a document that outlines the significant changes that the current administration made into the amendment. For Wyoming, those significant changes focus on two areas. One is PHMA plus. This is also known as a special area that they put in the draft EIS that was in addition to sage grouse core. We expressed in our comments and over time that this area was not needed. And with the significant changes, they removed it. Another change for Wyoming is in the adaptive management section. Adaptive management now refers and aligns with the state of Wyoming's adaptive management process. Previously, the BLM was doing their own population analysis and their own process. rather than referring to the state's authority over the bird. So now we are proud to say that in the document that they produced, it refers to the state's process and puts the Game and Fish in charge of that population analysis. So we're very pleased with what we see in this document, and we'll be submitting formal comments to say so as well. We also had a lot of engagement. We had 2 tri-state meetings, one with Montana and Idaho, our counterparts, and then our counterparts in Utah and Colorado. We do this every late summer, fall. And really the idea behind this is to get leadership from all these states in a room and talk about the difficult issues, learn from each other, and focus on things that we can do across boundaries as well. So a lot of valuable time spent in a room discussing the issues, and I'm hoping that all the staff found it just as valuable as I did. And then we also had an engagement with Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation. They brought us all up to Montana, and we met with the Western states, our WAFWA state partners, and spent several days talking about elk issues in our states. So definitely Wyoming had a lot to say, and we listened a lot. We talked about things like social tolerance of elk in our state, the different historical perspectives of what states have put in place to help change that view of elk, license issues, all sorts of things. And really we're able to get some ideas of what other successes states have had. Legislators, we went to both intra meetings, TRW and Joint Ag, this last month. And thank you, Commissioner Rusty Bell, for joining us at Joint Ag. Deputy Director Doug Biermeyer will give you an update, a more thorough update later today. But I do want to touch on that. Both committees continued the discussion on landowner license. In TRW, the discussion was really us giving them an update from your past commission meeting and where you guys landed. And then talking about a bill that they would like to move forward, at least at this point, to the next meeting to talk about a landowner license cap. We had the similar conversation in Joint Ag. We gave them an update and really had a good discussion on the issue in general. I would say that a lot of the legislators were starting to understand the issue and proposing solutions with that discussion. They too are looking at a couple draft bills. We'll know more at the next meeting. One of those bills is a landowner license cap, similar to TRW. And another one of those bills is more into the landowner transferable tag discussion. So we should know more before the session. They each have another interim meeting, and we'll see if those bills continue forward or not. I do want to mention tonight we're going to be celebrating Landowner of the Year Awards, really a special time just to take the time to recognize the value that landowners give to wildlife habitat. Tonight we will recognize 4 landowners. And I'd like to run through those with you here today so the public can hear who we're going to recognize. The first one is the Turtle Rock Ranch with Mark and Angela Grant and Craig and Mary Grant in the Laramie Range. We will also recognize the Chant family, Mary Hay, Tom Chant, and Archie Chant, and their places near Tipton. Thirdly, over in Johnson and Waukesha County is Betty and Martin Flalix. I'm not sure if I pronounced that correctly. And then fourth, just south of Cody, we have the J Bar 9 Ranch, along with the manager there, Bob Curtis, that we're going to recognize. So that should be a highlight for our evening. And, you know, we talk about wildlife habitat and their contribution there, but you will also notice that when we walk through these tonight in more detail, the amount of public hunting access a lot of them are providing to the general public as well, which is important to mention. I do want to also highlight that Commissioner Roberts and I will be able to go to a groundbreaking celebration this Thursday for the Wildlife Crossing Project on Highway 189, just south of Kemmerer. Very exciting. Thank you, Commissioner. He even sent me pictures of the work that's already been done. The contractor seems to be ahead of schedule, considering that the groundbreaking is happening after the work has started. But it will be a time to celebrate the success of the project and also to talk about what's next. So looking forward to that. And then lastly, but not least, I want to acknowledge our Wyoming Wildlife Magazine that the department puts out. I think you guys all get a copy of every month, and this one's extremely impressive. So this is one of their special issues. This one is on wildlife movement and done extraordinary well. One of the agenda items that we talk about tomorrow will be on the Sublet Antelope Migration Corridor. And even though we talk about big game corridors quite a bit within the commission, there's a wide breadth of other migrations that are so important to Wyoming's wildlife. And this magazine really outlines that. They walk through them in this perspective of air, water, and land, and talk about everything that is needed for Wyoming's wildlife and fisheries to continue to move on the landscape and why it's so important. So with that, we also brought several copies so those attending today can get a free issue if they're not already subscribed. And with that, President, I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you, Director Bruce. Any questions for the director?
Hi, Madam
I
President.
was ready for it.
This isn't really a question for you, Director, and thank you for your presentation. But just kind of a little note to self. After reading Commissioner Bell's or about Commissioner Bell's testimony in front of Joint Ag and the situation presented by the Pathfinder Ranch, I think it may be possible if it becomes necessary, because I think right now the legislature's got all that stuff. But I think we could craft a rule that would take care of those kind of subsidiary affiliate applicants. And I apologize to the commission. The light didn't go on until I read Commissioner Bell's insightful testimony, but I think there's actually a rule we could craft that would prevent those kind of associated entities from also qualifying for landowner licenses. So editorial comment, if I get hit by a truck, you can try to remember I brought it up. But, it's common language in contracts to cover related entities. And so I think that kind of language might be out there. That's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you. President Lovell, can I go on to the next agenda item? Great, thanks. So this is my very first Director's Award, and this was a tough one. Over 400 exceptional employees in this department. Who do I choose? Definitely not an easy task at all. But yet a fun one too, to recognize someone for their outstanding work. And so where I went with this is I really was thinking about is, you know, who goes above and beyond, not just in what they accomplish, but actually how they go about doing it. And this person is someone that I personally get compliments on their work almost weekly. If I'm at the grocery store, if I'm walking down the hall, there's a lot of public that continuously compliment this person. And it's interesting, this person does not wear a red shirt and they don't drive a green truck. However, they're the face of the department for so many of our constituents. This year's Director's Award goes to Tammy Michael. Tammy is a member of the Front Counter Telephone Information Center team in Cheyenne, where she has served since 2016. She is known for excellent customer service, attention to detail, and reliability. Tammy has a natural ability to connect with customers, always making them feel heard, valued, and respected. Her patience and cheerful demeanor immediately put people at ease, turning potential stressful situations into positive experiences. She has a strong background in education and is always eager to share knowledge and assist the team to provide complete and accurate information to our customers. Tammy's attention to detail sets her apart, as she has a keen eye for accuracy and quality, often catching minor errors or potential issues before they can accelerate. She is relentless in checking and rechecking information in our regulation brochures and on our website, reflecting her unwavering commitment to the department and its mission. Everyone she works with knows that they can depend on her to tackle any issue. Tammy will step in to help wherever and whenever she is needed. Her positive attitude and infectious energy help improve team morale. Tammy's kindness and positive outlook inspire those around her to do her best. Tammy is an invaluable member of the Game and Fish family. The department and our customers are fortunate to have her as part of our team. So with that, can you help me thank Tammy Michael for her contribution? Now, Tammy's not able to be here today, but I do know she's listening. I offered to have her up on the screen, and I'm not sure she was willing to do that or not, but I do know she's listening out there. So thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam President, Director Bruce, members of the commission. Next on your agenda is Brian Bedrosian, founder of Sporting Lead Free, to give you a quick update on the Sporting Lead Free.
President Lundvall, Commission, Director Bruce, Deputy Directors, I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to be here today. For those of you who have seen before, this will be just a brief update on our Sporting Lead Free initiative, who I haven't had the chance to meet yet. This is an opportunity to introduce to you some of the work that we've been doing and spearheading in Wyoming as an example that is now thankfully being followed by states like Alaska, Montana, Idaho, Colorado, in helping the conservation actions of our hunters and anglers while we're out there in the field. For those of you that I haven't met, I'm Brian Bedrosian. I'm an ornithologist. I'm a bird biologist that has been in Wyoming for the past 24 years, working on my career mainly with raptors, sage grouse, and ravens. I've spent the past 10 years as conservation and research director at Teton Raptor Center. But through my passion for hunting and angling and the research that I've done along the issue with lead ingestion in wildlife, I decided to start the Sporting Lead Free initiative here in Wyoming as a proof of concept, which is now branched out nationally, which I'll talk about in a second. Sorry, I'm clicking too fast. Okay, so just as a reminder for some of you and an introduction for others, Sporting Lead Free is a non-political, educational only initiative. We won't have anything to do with legislative or regulatory action around our ammunition and tackle choices, but just provide information to our hunters and anglers about the benefits of using lead-free alternatives that are out there. We are a community of hunters and anglers and organizations that strive for the betterment of the conservation of our wildlife through the use of lead-free ammunition and tackle. We've had amazing support, and I just want to start by saying thank you to the department, the commission, for the past 4 years since we've started. And it's just, I can't understate how important it is to work with partners like you all when we're talking about our sporting activities and all sporting activities that we do out, whether it's upland, big game, small game, varmint shooting, angling, to help conserve our wildlife through a variety of different avenues. So what I want to talk about and what we talk about at Sporting Lead Free is the ingestion, the accidental ingestion of lead particles from our sporting activities into our wildlife. So this is what happens when a traditional lead-based bullet hits an animal. This I shot into a water tank just for visual purposes, but you can see the x-rays in the deer on the bottom and in the loon on the top. That as that, whether it's a cup and core or a partition bullet or it will fragment as it goes through, and that much there in red, as you can see on the screen, if fully metabolized and ingested by an eagle that's, feeding on the gut pile of that animal that we leave out there, that's enough to kill an eagle. So that's the scale at which we're talking about, and it's easily switched over to lead-free alternatives. Why is this important? Well, Wyoming is to golden eagles as Wyoming is to sage grouse. We have the most, we've got the best, we all live here because of it, right? And we have a quarter of the breeding population of golden eagles in the Western United States. We host roughly half of all of the migrants that come down from Alaska and Canada. They overwinter here. Our population doubles. Why is that important now? Through long-term studies that I've been working on with the department and other collaborators, we're seeing roughly 30% of our population has declined in the past 20 years. It's pretty significant. It's not bald eagles. Bald eagles are doing amazing. Best conservation success story we've ever had. Every one of us should be proud of that. Golden eagles aren't facing that kind of same upward trajectory. It's something that we're really closely keeping an eye out, and lead poisoning is by far not the biggest cause of mortality, but it's something that we can easily do something about. So as a bird biologist, this is kind of how I got into it. And I want to make the point, we are not anti-lead. I still shoot lead at the range. This is a pro lead-free in the field. So when we're chambering around to go harvest our elk or our antelope, using a copper round and keeping the lead at the range. Again, it's not anti-lead, and I want to make sure that that is abundantly clear. So we do things in a variety, we try and promote this message in a variety of ways. Hopefully we can. We do this through 4 pieces of messaging. One is our heritage. We are the original conservationists. We want to promote that hunting heritage. We want to talk about the performance of lead-free ammunition. I wear this bolo because this is the bullet that I harvested the elk with these ivories. It works. It works well. We also talk about the ethics, know your target and beyond. That's not just in space, but also in time. What happens in the gut pile that we leave in the field. And then finally, the human health aspect. It's not alarmist. It's not going to cause anyone to go to the hospital, but there is lead in roughly 18% of our packaged meat that we bring home if we use lead-based ammunition. So those are our key talking points that we try and educate folks with. And we're doing this by building a community and ground up. We want to reach individual hunters. We have ambassadors now across, I think, 26 different states and a couple provinces, and conservation partner organizations. We have a free membership. It's just a, hey, this educational way is the way to go. So we're building community. We're doing this with partner organizations, and I highlight this because the breadth of organizations stems from rehab centers to ammunition manufacturers. This is not a conversation that needs to be divisive. It's a conversation that should bring people together. And that's what we're trying to achieve. We do a bunch of demos and events, whether it's mule deer days or the outdoor days in this building to Kemmerer outdoor days next weekend. We go and we try and reach people through events and demos. We also help other programs. We want to be supportive of our hunting and angling communities. We want to be a value add. So we try and do a lot of supporting other programs that are going on, whether they're the Inspire a Kid camps or the women's antelope hunts. Try and be there and be present and be helpful. I'm proud to say that we have now hand out lead-free tackle to all the kids fishing days across the state. This year we handed out over 2,000 lead-free tackle packs to kids, and have expanded that now to Montana and Idaho, and hope to include additional members. With our partners at the Wyoming Wildlife Federation, Wyoming Game and Fish Department, we also help host meat donation days. I personally have scanned about 9,000 pounds of donated game meat, and this is where that package, that 18% of the packaged ground will have some fragments in it. We make sure our families get the clean packages. None of the other packages get wasted or discarded. They're eaten by people that know what's in them. And again, it's not a big issue for adult non-childbearing years. We want to provide The goal of us, our organization is to be helpful. We have a ton of how-to guides, how to switch guides. We have demos or displays now in several Wyoming Game and Fish offices, including the one here in town, including ballistics gels and some of these epoxy casts showing that fragmentation. We want to be more helpful and we want to lead the way, particularly with your help. We don't want to do this in a vacuum. And then just to summarize, our goal is to promote ethical hunting and fishing. We want to do this in a way that is showcasing our hunting ethics as a community, showcase our continued wildlife heritage, look good to the non-hunting public, and do this in a way without needing any legislation or regulatory actions around our ammunition and tackle choices. So thank you again. I really appreciate the time to come here and give you the update. We are leading the way, just like we do with so many other conservation actions for here in Wyoming. And I'm really happy to say that what we grew here in Wyoming 4 years ago is now branching out nationally. And that's largely thanks to the department staff, you guys on the commission, and everybody else here in the state that is helping us with this education. So with that, I appreciate your time and I'm happy to take any questions if you have any.
Thank you, Madam President, and I appreciate your presentation. Thank you for coming up. My question has to deal with a subsection of the statute that lays out the authority of the commission. And one of those subsection addresses that this commission shall not ban the use of lead shot except in areas where shotgun shell pellets will exceed 20,000 per acre, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So given that the legislature has weighed in with a mandate to us, I'm just curious if you've had any inroads or any discussions with the legislature about this issue, just to, if nothing else, just to educate them about what you see.
Commissioner, thank you for that question. I very much appreciate it. I think from my personal standpoint and the standpoint of our sporting lead-free community, I don't want to touch legislation. I don't think we need mandates around this. I think this is an educational issue. 90% of the time or 98% of the time I'm doing SHOT Show or other expos, I leave with a handshake and a thank you from folks that didn't know about it. And so I think it's making correct, choices for individuals. Not everybody needs to switch, but if we can get a lot of people to switch over, that'd be great. And I think, thankfully the commission has put some language in the reg books, about that choice. And we've taken some proactive steps to help educate folks. And we want to help be that resource for you guys too. So hopefully it's not getting down to where we're having conversations with the legislature about trying to change what you guys can and can't do. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam President, Director Bruce, and members of the commission. As the director mentioned, since July commission meeting, we've been pretty busy with a lot of the legislative activities that were going on. And so what I want to do today is give you a little update on where things have been, what we've been involved with. And so we've attended several meetings, as the director mentioned. Special thanks to Commissioner Masterson and especially Commissioner Bell for their attendance and Commissioner Bell's testimony at the joint ag meeting. So on August 19th, TRW met in Casper, and during the day, the committee took action on several things of note. The Legislative Service Office provided a review of the corner crossing bill, which basically provided some clarity in that bill for when people would cross over 2 parcels of land at a corner, and allowing those folks to be able to do that without committing trespass if they didn't cause damage to the properties. So after a pretty lengthy discussion within the committee, that bill did move forward out of committee by a narrow margin. So we'll hear more on that one later on. The TRW committee also had another draft bill that was titled Come Home Hunting Licenses, that would have allowed non-residents who once lived in Wyoming to come home to hunt with their parents, siblings, and other close family members. after a lot of discussion, among the committee, the bill failed for a lack of second. Another companion bill was related to that one was non-resident native licenses. And both of these bills were modeled after some existing legislation in Montana that tries to further family traditions with people that have left the state. And so the non-resident native licenses would have offered licenses to persons who now live out of state, but were born to Wyoming to parents that are residents at the time of their birth. This draft bill also failed due to a lack of action at the committee. So following those two bills, the department also provided an update on the landowner licenses, as Director Bruce mentioned, and basically highlighted what transpired during the commission meeting. And then Chief Osterlin presented an update on the House Bill 5, which was the fishing outfitters and guide bill. And you'll be hearing more on that draft regulation that we're bringing forward to you tomorrow. At the end of the day, the TRW committee asked LSO to draft a bill to amend Wyoming statute 23-1302. This is authorized the Game and Fish Commission to establish the quotas for and maximum limits for the landowner licenses. They also consider the 2025 engross bill, Senate File 99, which is the fishing property tax and the industrial property tax exemption, and then also entertain additional discussion related to industrial siting. So also later on in the month of August, we also gave testimony to the Joint Ag Committee, and that's one that Director Bruce also mentioned. And during that committee meeting, a lot of discussion regarding a draft bill that Representative Winters brought forward to provide the agency an opportunity to cap landowner licenses. A lot of discussion during the meeting, and after some discussion about potentially adding some additional topics to that draft bill, LSO was directed to review the draft Winters bill that provided a means for the agency the commission to cap landowner licenses, to bring that review to them in November, and then also bring a second bill to the Joint Ag Committee that allows for the transfer of licenses. Also includes limiting the number of land licenses that they could transfer to 2. So if a landowner is getting 2 elk, 2 deer, or 2 antelope, they would be limited to being able to transfer 2 of those licenses. In addition, they asked for the LSO to come up with a means to limit the number that an area can give to landowners, which wasn't real clear during the meeting, but they called it a point system that was referenced during the discussion. But that basically provided the LSO some direction to look into that a little bit more. There was also discussion about if they have a landowner license that is transferable, that the means that those ranches are engaged in agricultural production, that it be a component of it, either through the county's tax rolls or through the major income that they acquire from that property. So LSO will come back to the Joint Ag Committee in November with those 2 bills. Some of the other committees that are also gave attention to some wildlife or natural resource issues were the Select Water Committee, and the Select Natural Resource Committee also had interest in federal actions that are going on, and there was updates on a little more active timber management so that those committees can be streamlined, a little bit more active engagement in timber management across the state. So we're monitoring a few things, and during the next, this fall, we'll be continuing to provide some information and technical information to the legislative committees on draft bills that may be coming up in November. So with that, concludes what I have on that topic.
President, I don't know if I have any questions. I did the best I could. I felt like, and I guess we'll just have to see what those look like when they come out. And I think the only question I didn't answer was Representative Winters asked where I'd gotten that that draft, and it was actually on the LSO website. So I just pulled it right off of that. But I mean, I think we had really good discussion. I think the discussion after was also very interesting, and I guess we'll just see what transpires. So there was a lot of conversation, Doug, just like you said, about landowner licenses for only ag producers and how to do that. And I cautioned the committee on that there's really, really good habitat on recreational properties also that are not just producing something that pays them, that they actually have recreational property that doesn't have animals on it or doesn't have domestic animals on it and or crops that they're harvesting. And we'll see how that looks when they draft that, I guess.
Yeah, Madam President and Commissioner Bell, we really appreciate the effort that you put in and the position that you were put in. You were kind of on the hot seat for quite a while. I think you did an excellent job at conveying some of the history and especially the task force role in this. Thanks again.
Yeah, I think one question I had, maybe this department question, Madam President, is, we received in the task force, when we talked about transferable landowner tags, I believe thousands of comments. That's really public record. And I wonder if there's a way that we can just forward that to, that information is there and it's not that old. I think it's fair to put that out to maybe get that out to either to LSO or to the committees to, if they want to look at it, they can. But that was a very short window of public comment, less than 45 days for sure, that we put that out. If my recollection was maybe 30 and probably more like 3 weeks. And it was significant public comment.
President, can I address that? Yeah, Commissioner Bell, that's a good idea that we can pull that out. That full report is online from the task force, but it is a very, very large document. So we could pull that out and put that in our read ahead materials prior to the next meeting for joint ag. Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Good afternoon, President Lundvall, Director Bruce, Commission members. I'm Mark Nelson, the Planning Chief in the Director's Office, and I have 4 policies to update today. And just as a reminder, in other commission meetings, past commission meetings, we've done some updates, and we found that a lot of our policies are pretty antiquated, 20, 25 years old and in dire need of updates. So I'll be giving 4 policy updates, and Chief Osterlund has several for the Fish Division after this presentation. And again, as a reminder, some of these policies could be better written to give the department the flexibility to update details without having to go before you guys for every little fiscal travel change update. You can give us the authority to do that. And some policies really might be better suited to be more of a procedures for our employees and not in policy. And some other policies could just be eliminated. Some are go contra to how we do business. For instance, one of the policies that'll be changed in an upcoming meeting directs the department not to have advertisements in our brochures, but we do that in our fish regulations, so we need to change that. So with that, I will get on with our changes today, and I'll just hit the highlights that need to be revised. The first one, gifts to the commission or the department. This policy talked or has language in it about the Wildlife Heritage Foundation. We no longer do business, so to speak, with that foundation, so that language has been removed, proposed to be removed. More of the Heritage Foundations deleted on the second page, and then just some language edits with different deputy director terminology for their titles. This policy, 4M, the miscellaneous purchases, there was or is an executive order that was rescinded that allows the department just to make minor purchases, coffee machines and whatnot with department funds. So unnecessary language was deleted, removed from this policy. For instance, it talked about some major appliances, which this one just deals with minor purchases, not this one here has a, I think, washer and dryer, things like that, that shouldn't be in this policy. This one, you can see it's been revised quite heavily, our records retention policy. And part of the hat, one of the hats that I wear is the records retention officer. So I go through the schedule of the records retention, and this directs the department how long we can keep documents. 3 years, 5 years, some of them we have to keep forever. But that policy on the last page is changed quite often by the state entity that deals with the records retention. So we just revised that to get rid of that schedule and just follow as those records retentions are updated. So the clean version looks like that, much smaller, much neater, gives us more flexibility. And then there's a note with the state archives that's actually who directs us for our retention schedules, that they make the schedules that we follow. And then the director designates a records officer per statute. Directors authorized or directed to do that. And then this link will help our employees. It goes right to those retention schedules if they have questions. And this next one, policy 6I, selection of statistics. We propose just to eliminate this one. This one directed the department to gather this information, to get it out to the public. This is something we do in the normal course of business, and it really doesn't have to be in policy. So that brings me to the end of this short presentation. And we do recommend the commission vote to approve revisions or eliminations of the policies that were just presented. And I certainly will stand if you have any questions.
I think we have a few, Chief. Commissioner Masterson.
Thank you, Madam President. I really appreciate the way you presented these, these are a lot of changes and you did it in a very digestible way. So thank you for that. My question is, does A&I mandate any record retention? That's what triggered the question. I was wondering if A&I had some across the board, every state agency has to do this. Whether it's in record retention or anything else, and whether there was any consultation that was required for you to put these in place.
President Lundvall, Commissioner Masterson, they do. They direct all agencies on what they should retain. And again, it's across the board. Some are retained 3 years. Some, like our public information requests, are retained forever. We never get rid of those. And each agency has a liaison that they work with if there's questions. So and I utilize ours quite often because some of them can be confusing, what records should be retained, what should be destroyed. Of course, the agency has the option to always keep the records and not destroy them. I guess some of the pitfalls or dangers of that would be if you do get a records request and you have those records, you need to give all those up. You need to research and go through all those records. So our recommendation to our employees is to follow those schedules. And if it's 3 years, destroy. If you don't need them, destroy them.
Any other questions?
Madam President, I would move for the commission to vote to approve the revisions or the eliminations of the outdated policies as presented.
All right, we have a motion on the table. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any other questions or discussions about the motion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chief Oster.
Good afternoon, Madam President, Commissioners, Director Bruce, Alan Osterlin, Chief of Fisheries. And as Mark mentioned, Fish Division has 6 policies that we'd like some revisions done to, updating in a lot of cases, making it more modernized to our practices that we use now, or in one case, a statute that was changed that directs how the department operates. So in your packet, I'll just go through each one of these as you have them listed in your packet, starting with 7P. And there's a clean copy and there's a track changes copy. So we'll just go through real quick. The first one is reciprocal fishing agreements, and that's a statute. And this policy directs gives the commission some direction there, and directs the commission can give direction to the department. So over the years, we've only got one reciprocal agreement, and that's on Flaming Gorge, and that's with the state of Utah. We've had several iterations since this came into effect. And the most recent one is an agreement we have with Utah in about 2018. So this policy is 2006. So the changes that you see there just reflect the language of the current agreement versus the one that we had from 1995. Moving on to in-stream flow administration. This is a 2005 version of the policy, and you'll see on the bullet 4 in your track changes, this is what I was referencing for statute 41-3 2004. I think that statute was modified in 2021 maybe. And what it did was directed that up until that date, the Water Development Commission paid for the in-stream flow studies that we have done from consultants. And that statutory change directed the commission to pay for those consultant studies. So all that language you see there just reflects that statutory change. Moving on to 7E, conditions for providing fish or fish eggs to others. So the department does provide eggs to other agencies and trades, but they also, we will provide eggs to private hatcheries. And this is just a subtle change in there. The benefit that we get out of that, we don't make any money out of it. It's just cost that we charge those private producers, but we're assured where that source is coming from us, and that's a clean source. And moving on to 7C, fish stocking, you'll see a lot of red there. And so this is an example where we try to modernize the statute from current day practices. The department tries to manage all its fisheries on a wild fisheries basis. And where we can't do that, that's where the fish stocking comes into place. Or if the amount of pressure or take can't sustain wild fisheries, then we will do fish stocking. So most of the changes you see there are just modernizing it and cleaning up the language. And then at the end of that policy, we remove some of the language that refers to stocking rates and evaluations because they were not applicable anymore. And moving on to 7B, chemical rehabilitation of fisheries. Just some modernization again. The existing policy doesn't talk about amphibians, mollusks, or crustaceans, or about eradication of aquatic invasive species. So we made some inserts there talking about that. On this one, you'll see under licensing requirements, under the track changes, it talks about apply toxicants that target fish, mollusks, crustaceans, amphibians. After this was in the packet, we got some questions from our personnel about the word apply. We have personnel that have those pesticide licenses, but we also, on big projects, like on the Big Sandy project, we had a lot of different drip stations. And we had a lot of people that had to man them. It's not a one-man job. So we would like that to say direct the application of toxicants instead of apply. So that's a change from what you have in your packet there, but I think that covers us better from a policy perspective. And then lastly, 7A, electrofishing. Again, it's just this is a 1998 policy, as Mark mentioned, that's over 25 years old. It's just modernizing the policy. This is a very important one. It's a very important tool that we use, and we want to make sure that the policy is there to protect our folks that are utilizing this tool. And that's the last one I have. I'll glad to take any questions you have.
Madam President, Mike. Thanks, Alan. Going back to the reciprocal, I don't know, do you happen to know what our relationship is with Palisades Reservoir and with Idaho? Is there any, and I don't know if this is a proper form to bring that up as far as the reciprocality of it, because, you know, it's a reservoir that pretty much when they drain it towards the end in the fall, there's not much in Wyoming whatsoever. But also I believe that some of the national park, the fish hatcheries and the national stock fish in there. So I don't know, is it on the radar, or has it never been a thought of, or what, do you happen to know, or should we just bring it up at a different time? Thanks.
Madam President, Commissioner Roberts, I don't know the history of that. We have basically 3 interstate waters. We have the Bighorn Reservoir, Palisades, and then the Gorge. I know that like in Montana, they're not really interested in getting in a reciprocal agreement with us. And that might be the case in Idaho. You know, when you're talking these reciprocal agreements, states make more money when people are buying the licenses on a non-resident basis. So that's sometimes the gist of it, but I'll look into it and I'll get back with you on that, Commissioner.
Any other questions? All right, we have a recommendation from the department. What is the pleasure of the commission?
Madam President, I move that we approve the revisions of the outdated policies in the fish division as recommended.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a second. Any other questions or discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners.
All right, President Lundvall, members of the commission, and Director Bruce. This morning, I just have one property rights item to bring to you for approval. That would be the replacement of the North Gillette Game Warden Station in Gillette. So the department has determined that the North Gillette Game Warden Station is in need of replacement. And as after a pretty extensive search, we did find a house to replace that house with. The house is located at 16 Kettleson Crossing. It's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house built in 2022 with a 3-car garage. The house has an unfinished basement that can be used for storage for now, but in the future, we can finish out that basement if we need additional space in the house. The house is currently under contract for $450,000. And we have completed multiple inspections on the house. Everything came back great as far as the inspections go. The appraisal came in at above what our contract price is, which is also great. We'd like to move towards a closing on the house on Friday of this week. That was one of the stipulations that the sellers had. We offered less than the list price for the house, but they wanted to close on the 12th if possible. So pending the commission's approval today, we'll close on Friday. So at this time, the department is recommending the commission vote to approve the acquisition of a house at 16 Kettleson Crossing to become the new North Gillette Game Warden Station for $450,000. And in my original packet that I sent out to the commission, I was asking for closing costs from the commission. But in the meantime, we determined that we would just use our lands branch existing standard budget for the closing costs. So today I'm just asking for the full $450,000 approval to spend that on this house. With that, I'll stand for any questions you may have about it.
Questions? All right, what's the pleasure of the commission?
Well, go ahead. Go ahead. Madam President, I would approve this. I would move to approve this, this purchase.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any other questions or discussion regarding the motion?
Madam President, it's hard to find a house anywhere, but certainly in Campbell County, it's pretty tough. And so I know we've been looking for a while, and to find one that was, I'm just happy we found one, and it's a newer house. So it's a good thing.
And Madam President, I'd note that it's consistent with contributing to the economic development of Campbell County as well. So I'll vote in favor of the motion.
Always a good thing. Okay, all those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Happy closing on Friday. Chief Smith. There he is.
President Lundvall, members of the commission, and Director Bruce. Craig Smith, Deputy Chief for Wildlife Division. I don't have a PowerPoint presentation for you today, just some information. I don't anticipate it'll take too much of your time today. But just to give you a little bit of background and take you back about a year and a half ago or so, when the department was working through a lot of elk issues specifically in southeast Wyoming and eastern Wyoming, and a lot of discussions at the legislative level. And so as a result of all of that, last year at the September commission meeting, the commission approved a modified Chapter 28 damage regulation that included the expansion of the definition of extraordinary damage to grass. And what that expansion did was included a definition of rangelands and the ability for the commission to pay damage that was extraordinary as it occurred to rangeland. At that time, there was a lot of discussion on what kind of an impact that change may have on the damage budget for the department and the commission. And we reported to you at that time that we were really uncertain what it would have, but that there was a pretty good opportunity that it could be substantial. Just depends on how many people suffer that damage and approach the commission and file claim, or the department, and file claims for that. So what I'm here to report to you today is that we have had some inquiries. Most of those inquiries actually fell into a different category. And to date, we have not had a claim filed under the extraordinary damage to rangeland portion that was expanded last year. It was also just the timing of it might have been a little bit off for the seasonality. in terms of that. And so we'll continue to monitor and watch this as we move forward. And if something becomes a concern for us, we'll certainly advise the commission of such. But to date, we have not had a budgetary impact by the expansion of that. So with that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Any questions from the commission?
Yeah, Madam President, I guess I'm perplexed. I guess I'm shocked because of the urgency that we had to listen for this extraordinary claim in grass and kind of the overview that we got, that we just had to be that there's no claim filed yet. I think.
President Lumval, Commissioner Roberts, yeah, that's correct. Like I mentioned, we've had a few folks kind of approaching the department, our employees, and asking how it works and what they were experiencing wasn't quite what this had expanded for. So those claims were addressed, but to date, we haven't had a claim filed under this specific.
I mean, because I recall there was a lot of testimony from a lot of folks that just were adamant that this had to be done. Nothing. All right. Thank you.
Madam President, while they, if I may, I don't,
While we stare awkwardly. at
while
the
they're
two
caucus,
commissioners.
I appreciate the presentation. What is the deadline for someone to apply for damage payments? Or what's the deadline?
Madam President, Commissioner Masterson, there really is no specific deadline other than once the damage has been discovered by the claimant, they have a deadline to report it to the department in order to be eligible. And then once the damage has ended, then they have a deadline to file the claim or we cannot authorize it.
You know off the top of your head what those are? Sorry for this.
Certainly, yes. Upon discovery, the claimant has 15 days to notify the department. And then once the claim is ended, they have 60 days to submit the claim.
All right. My follow-up question is, I'm looking at the summary of 10-year statewide damage and fiscal year report. And there's like a 30% drop in the number of claims from FY 23 to FY 24. Any speculation as to why that drop off?
President Lumval, Commissioner Masterson. Yeah, I think what we've seen there is after that severe winter, we had that's responsible for the big spike. And so the drop off is just a result of that big spike. It's probably somewhat responsive to fewer animals on the ground in some places of the state, and so less damage.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions? All right,
Thank you.
Madam President, Director Bruce, members of the commission. I'm Dan Smith. I'm the Wildlife Division Chief and Chief Game Warden for the department, and I'm only here to do an introduction. As you'll recall, last year, there were a lot of significant fires in the state, one of those being the house straw fire, lose my words right there. The house straw fire. And so I've asked Todd Kaltreiter to give us an update on the fire and a sage grouse seeding project that followed that. So if I could have Todd come up.
Madam President, members of the commission, Director Bruce, thank you for today. Today, I'm going to talk about the aerial sagebrush seeding that we did following the house straw fire. Game and Fish was heavily involved with this project in the house straw fire, which occurred in Johnson County in 2024. This was a unique project in many ways because we have very limited experience with aerial seeding in Wyoming. And so this was a chance to see if this was a tool that could be used to restore sagebrush following a wildfire. So first I'll go a little bit over the house straw fire and its impacts on wildlife. So the house straw fire was started in August 2024. This was ignited by a dry lightning storm. This was the same storm that also caused the fire, the Constitution fire and Flat Rock fire in Campbell County. So one storm just had a massive impact in Northeast Wyoming. This was an interesting fire in terms of how much private land it burned. So the majority of the fire was private land. And so that really changed, funding sources about how to, what sources could be used to put money on the ground. There's very little BLM in state compared to the private land. So the fire itself is a total of 175,000 acres. And majority of that, about 100,000 acres of that burnt in about 12 hours. So it was a really fast moving fire. So the really big impact to wildlife with this fire was its impact to our sage grouse population. It burnt right through the middle of the Buffalo Core sage grouse area. So 32% of the area designated as core was burned by this fire. Through some estimates, we think about 85% of the sagebrush within that fire perimeter was completely gone, burnt out. The one positive side of it is a low intensity of fire. It moved so fast that there wasn't much time to really do soil damage. So that was luckily for that part in terms of getting plants to reestablish after the fire. On this figure here, it's been cut out, but this was the core area that was burned. So this is what's left after the fire. So. Shoot, went too fast, sorry. So in terms of the elects that were impacted, 12 sage-grouse elects were completely burnt in the fire scar. And then within the 2-mile buffer of the elects, there was 22 elects that were affected by the fire scar. So it had a pretty big impact on quite a few sage-grouse in this area. Before I get started on talking about the sagebrush seeding, aerial seeding itself, I just want to kind of go through the process that we had to kind of go through to make this project happen. We were really lucky that we had a great team of natural resource managers that were working together on this problem. There's a county group called the Johnson County Natural Habitat Restoration Team. And they formed after the Cato fire in 2011 to address impacts to sage grouse and fire. And this group stayed together ever since. And we've worked on a lot of different fires together. And we got a really good, it involves the BLM, the Weed and Pest, the Clear Creek Conservation District, the DEQ, Pheasants Forever, Imagine with the University of Wyoming, NRCS. So it's just a great group that's worked together for a long time on these things. So when this happened, we kind of already had a team who was, knew how to work together and get the job done. And so that was pretty nice to have. After the house drop fire, though, it was pretty concerning the amount of sagebrush that was lost. Prior to this, we hadn't done much effort in trying to reestablish sagebrush just because the chances seemed really low of getting it to take. And then also there just wasn't a lot of interest from landowners in the past fires and getting sagebrush reestablished. So we spent most of our efforts on trying to combat fires from happening. So we've put a lot of our effort into doing cheatgrass spraying in good sage-grouse habitats, try to prevent the next fire from happening. But after this fire, we realized we lost so much habitat that we thought we need to maybe revisit trying to get sagebrush established. We had tried seedlings in the past in small quantities, and we just had not had great luck with that. And so we weren't really eager to go down that route. And so we decided that maybe we could get more bang for our buck and cover more area if we could try aerial sagebrush seeding. And so the goals of the project were basically to, revitalize the ecosystem. So sagebrush is an important component of this landscape for various wildlife species, not only sage grouse, but mule deer and pronghorn as well. And so the purpose of this project was try to restore, these plants back to the system to help the other species that depend on them. And the other thing was try to get good seed distribution across important areas of the fire to make sure that we have a good chance of, getting a bigger area impacted by our project versus smaller seeding plots. So. So one of the really big steps was to figure out where to do this, because we knew that we were going to be limited on how much area we could cover with a 180,000 acre fire. So we really figured, well, where's the best place that we can put this to be the best benefit to sage grouse? And so We worked a lot with DEQ, the Band Alliance program. Josh Oakleaf and Chris Carroll have been working on developing models to help determine where the best nesting habitat is, not only nesting, brooding, all different aspects of sage grouse, so that you can help hone in on these areas that mean the most to grouse. We focused on nesting habitat for this project because we thought nesting habitat was what was lost with the sagebrush. That was the most important thing that we were trying. And then on top of that, we also needed to account for other factors such as where's a good place that sagebrush will grow. We know that sagebrush likes low burn severity. We know that it likes areas free of cheatgrass. It likes north facing slopes. So we took all these factors and put them all together to be able to come up with a model to help us really pick the best places to put this on the ground. And so on the left here, this is the model that DEQ developed that showed sage grouse nesting habitat based on, whether it's good or bad. The darker green means that it's better habitat. Red is less habitat. So we took this model and then we mixed it in with the other factors I discussed: cheatgrass, northeast facing slopes, burn severity, and all those factors to kind of help hone in where the best spots were to do that. And so we kind of developed 4 different polygons to do the seeding. We did right here. This is on the Wells property. This is on the Bellis property. This is on the Falsa property. And then this little one up here is up on the Ruby Ranch. And so those are the 4 that we picked for our areas. But that was just step 1 of the many things we had to do. This project was really complicated because we basically had to secure funding, secure seed, find a contractor, and then figure out where to put the seed all in a short window of time. We kind of decided around September that we were going to try to, pull off this aerial sagebrush seeding, but that was kind of a bad time to get money and to get stuff going on the ground because we had a really limited window. And so, and I guess to back up, I kind of forgot about this, but when we initially were thinking about doing this aerial sagebrush seeding, we didn't know what we were doing. We didn't have any idea. We'd never done it before. Ian Tater had a contact with the Nevada Department of Wildlife. And so he put us in touch with them, and they sat down and gave us a great presentation about their efforts. So from there, we kind of learned about what it would take. And their recommendations was to get the seed out when there's snow on the ground. And so winter was going to be our timetable for getting this done. So when we kind of decided to do it in September, we're like, well, we don't have much time. So we had to get it all put together. The funding was a real challenge because, as you guys know, most of our grant money, is we apply for it in the winter and get it in the spring. So when you're by fall, most of your funding sources are completely depleted. And so finding, sources for this was really tough. And again, since it was mostly private land, there wasn't a lot of BLM dollars or federal dollars that were there able to help. So we reached out to a lot of different groups, and we got lucky. We reached out to the Northern Great Plains Joint Venture, and they were able to help us get in touch with other partners as well as provide some funding. The Clear Creek Conservation District provided funding, received funding from the South Central, the Southwest, and the Wind River Sweetwater Sage Grouse Working Groups. They had some leftover funds and they were interested in this project, so they gave them to us. We also received funds from the Mule Deer Foundation and the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation. And that was, like I said, I was amazed that we even got that much, but it was like cool that people were interested in this project and able to, work hard and get some funding put together for this. So by the time that we kind of had exhausted our sources, we ended up with around $428,000. And so that was kind of what we kind of based our budget on and tried to work off of that. So the next challenge was trying to find the seed. Same thing. The seed was pretty much spoken for at that point. And so it's pretty hard to, try to find a source. So we just kept calling private seed contractors, seeing if someone had available. And finally, we talked with Granite Seed and they said, yeah, I think we can get you some seed. And so that worked out. They were able to get some fresh seed for us that was collected in Idaho. It was in the same eco type region. And so we thought it'd be a good match for this project. And so we were able to get 25,000 pounds roughly of sagebrush seed from them for this project. The other big challenge was trying to find an aerial seeder. There's not any aerial seeders to my knowledge in Wyoming. We definitely not have done any. A lot of aerial seeding typically is done with grain. And so to find someone who's done it with like native seed is really hard. There were some guys in Idaho, but they were pretty booked up. They had a lot of work already lined out. And so we ended up reaching out to one of a contractor we do a lot of cheatgrass spraying with in Sheridan, Bighorn Flying Company. And we asked them if they would be interested in that. And they said they would be interested in looking into it. And they ended up just being a terrific resource and great partner on the project. Even though they had never done it before, they reached out to the guys in Idaho. They had a relationship with those guys, and those guys helped them get set up and geared to go. And just based on our experience doing cheatgrass work with them, they're just phenomenal contractors. They just do a good job. They take the time to do things right. So even though it was their first rodeo as well, we were confident that they would take the time to figure it out and give us a successful product. And so basically by the time we got the funding and the seed put together, we kind of estimated that we could roughly seed about 1,800 acres back. And so of course it's a small portion of the fire. Wish we could have done more, but at the same time, we definitely knew that we were focusing on some of the best areas that were the most benefit sage-grouse through the modeling efforts that we had done. So in addition, we also received 10,000 pounds of grass seed mix that had sagebrush in it that was left over for some abandoned mines program. They got wintered out of some of their higher country. And so the seed was basically gonna, not be any good if it didn't get on the ground. So they donated that to us, and that gave us another about 200 acres. And so that was really awesome that they were able to provide that for us to help us with our project. So then it came time to just, when was the right condition? Nevada said that the best time was to have snow on the ground, and then it'd be even better if you can get a blanket of snow on top of that. So we were kind of waiting for that. We got our seed right after New Year's, but then the aerial seeders, they weren't quite ready yet. Because it isn't like you go to a car dealership and buy a seeder. Like you have to order it and it has to be put together. And they were working as fast as they could, but we didn't get the seeder till about the middle of February, which actually kind of worked out right because we didn't have much snow in Northeast Wyoming. We had a big dump right after New Year's, and then it stayed wide open till about then. As soon as they called us and said that they had the seeder ready, we had just gotten a big dump of snow. So we decided to pull the trigger and go do it. So we did that in the middle of February. And it took us about 10 days to get all the seed out. And then we got really lucky. 3 days after we completed we actually got another big dump of snow. So I think all in all, we couldn't have asked for better conditions to try to get it on the snow. So, and that's got the seed. Oops, sorry, go back. Well, I guess you can see it here. That's what the seed looks like. It's like sawdust. It's just tiny. And so that was just really interesting trying to feed it through the seeder and get it out. It was really interesting. We did everything with an airplane, an air tractor. Here's pictures of us loading the seed into the plane. So we had a forklift to lift it up above. We'd have to pound the seed with hammers to get it in the plane, and he'd go dump it. And he was only gone like a half an hour and be back, and we'd do it again. And we did that for 10 days, but. Oh, shoot, sorry. So in terms of the monitoring, so of course, we followed up and did some monitoring. The University of Wyoming has a range crew, and they were out doing a bunch of monitoring on the fire already. And so they dedicated their time to go do the monitoring to see the results. They went out to our planting sites and did a 50 meter belt transects throughout the fire, in and out, just to make sure they could see what it was like inside and out, to show if there was a difference. The results were, I guess, not as great as we had hoped. We did get sagebrush germination, and the plant density ranged from about 1 to 10 plants per 50 meters squared. And just for reference, mine reclamation, like on the coal mines, is 1 plant per meter squared. So our density is lower than what we thought in the places that we did get germination. It was really variable across too. The best germination we had was on the Bellis property. On the Falsa property, we had 0 germination. We could not find any plants that came up this year. The Wells property was kind of in between. It was not as good as the Bellis, but there was some there. So that was kind of interesting to see how there was such a variable across the landscape. I guess not all is completely lost, though. A lot of the coal mines have documented in their reclamation efforts that they get germination years two and three after. So, we may get more germination next couple of years, and we'll be watching that to really see if that's the case. So, yeah. And so anyways, following this, we, us with the Conservation District and the Pheasants River put in for our grant application with the fire recovery money to do continued sagebrush seeding. We're not going to do aerial seeding this time. We're based off our discussion in Nevada, it seems like your real window to do that's like right after the fire. So I think, especially with the rain that we got this year in Northeast Wyoming, I think our herbaceous grasses have covered really nicely, which is good. But at the same time, it's going to inhibit Germany or, aerial seeding, effectiveness of aerial seeding. So we're going to move to drill seeding. We got 2.5 million to do drill seeding. And so we're going to do another 2,200 acres this fall to try to, add more sagebrush to landscape if possible. So, we received some other funds as well to do some invasive annual grasses spraying where that's coming up in the fire, and also to continue some music restoration work that's been ongoing in that fire area as well. So. Yeah, I guess I mentioned so. And yeah, there was just a huge amount of partners that made this happen. I won't go through them all, but yeah, we just definitely was a great project just to see everyone rally together and have so many people help us to get this off the ground. And so just thank them all so much for helping out. And with that, here to answer any questions.
Any questions for Todd?
Madam President, thank you for this presentation and thank you for the work you guys did. That's a pretty huge learning curve in a short window, isn't it? But I applaud your efforts to do that and restore this habitat. Was the department able to do any counts on those leks this spring following that fire? And if so, what did the numbers look like?
Madam President, Commissioner Haskell, yes, they did. I guess in general, there were sage-grouse came back to those areas after the fire, but that's pretty much been documented in a lot of literature just because that's where they go and they'll go back. So over time, that may change. Lek attendance was down about half within the burn scar. The ones on the edge was a little bit better, but we definitely overall saw a decline in sage-grouse that were in that burn area.
Very good, thank you. And then also with this, is there any talk in the department to maybe be a little more forward thinking, because we've been in fire season already again this year, and now that you guys have broken the ice and started this project and learned new things, maybe looking for funding resources ahead of time and not having to scratch last minute. So I guess that would be my recommendation to the department, is maybe be a little forward thinking on this. And if we have to have conversations within the body of the commission to, look at funding and maybe putting it in places to, hopefully not ever have to use it, but in case things like this happen, we can have that in place to not have to hurry and scramble last minute. Thank you.
Madam President, Todd, you said you bought 25,000 pounds. This is all big sage, I assume. How much is a pound of big sage seed?
Madam President, Commissioner Mai, so we paid on it for a pound of pure live seed. So it was $50 for a pound of pure live seed. And so we seeded at 4 pounds of pure live seed per acre. So it's $200 per pound.
So, Madam President, I mean, the coal mines have pulled their hair out trying to get sagebrush to grow for decades, longer than probably anybody in this room wants to acknowledge. And there have been a lot of runs at trying to lower that threshold for reclamation and all that. And some of them I know have been successful just because of the difficulty of reclaiming sagebrush. But so to me, this is a really interesting project possibility. Do you know, is Sheridan, R&E, are they doing a long-term study on recovery of sage in this area?
Well, they were involved with this project directly, and so they're, in monitoring this with us, you know what I mean? They're interested in this as well. And I mean, and just for your information, Laurel Vickland, I know Laurel, but I reached out to her on this, because I knew she had more experience growing sagebrush than anyone in Northeast Wyoming. And so I've chatted with her about her thoughts on, how to make this successful. And so I think they were really interested in it too. And, hopefully we can watch this and learn over time to see if this is a feasible, course to do. So.
Madam President, if I may, what's the application rate of that seed? So you applied 25,000 pounds. Clearly, you're not going to do it everywhere in that acreage that you identified, but what were you trying to apply per acre? How many?
Yeah, Madam Level, Commissioner Mai. So we were targeting 4 pounds of pure life seed per acre, which was that was kind of problematic too, in a way, because in Nevada, they're going to 1 pound of pure life seed per acre, maybe up to 2. And so we were quadrupling that. But that was based off conversations with Laurel Vickland and the mines. They seed at that higher rate. And I think in Northeast Wyoming, we're in a different system. Our herbaceous component recovers really fast after fire, so it's always competing with that. So she really recommended that higher rate, and so we did that accordingly. And just interestingly, it was hard to even get that much out of the plane. We couldn't figure it out at first. We were flying, trying to get 4 pounds of pure life seed, which ended up being 14 pounds of bulk seed per acre. And we couldn't get it out. And finally, the pilot called the guy in Idaho. He's like, "Man, we cannot get 14 pounds out." He's like, "You will not get 14 pounds out. You're lucky to get 8." And so we had to actually double pass. And luckily we had left some cushion in our budget to be able to do double pass. So we were able to do it on budget still. But yeah, it was actually 14 pounds per acre is what bulk seed, but only 35% of that seed's viable. The rest of it's just fluff, you know what I mean? Like a shaft that comes from collecting it. And so, yeah.
Just one more, Madam. Sorry.
Oh, no.
It's a really unique, gigantic scale reclamation project you've got going there. I mean, hopefully not one that we get to study very often. So I guess, but the last question I've got for you is, so when you evaluate, just because of the scale, I assume that was the driver on the aerial seeding and probably the accessibility of it too. The comparator that you came up with was Nevada. Were they doing the same thing? Was that an aerial seeding project down in Nevada on similar scale?
I can't vouch because I think they've been doing a lot of it. I mean, that area has had a lot of fires throughout the years, so I'm not sure exact. I mean, this wasn't like they had tried it before. They've been doing a lot of it in Utah and Nevada, so I'm sure they've done it. I'm not sure how much they're doing, but I know that when I talked to the pilot in Idaho, he already had 10,000 acres that he had planned. So I think they're doing it a lot larger than we are. And I mean, we would have definitely loved to have done more. It was just what funding we could get put together in such a short amount of time. So.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, thank you so much.
Yep, thank you.
Hit your button.
How about now?
Yeah, there we go.
President Lovell, members of the commission, Director Bruce, I'm Brian Parker. I'm the Habitat and Access Branch Chief. I'm introducing Brad Sorensen. He's the Cody Habitat and Access Supervisor. He's going to give you a short presentation on Yellowtail Wildlife Habitat Management Area prior to seeking your approval to renew 20-year management agreement with the Bureau of Reclamation so we can manage their land on the WHMA.
Have to push, oh, we're good. Never mind, sorry. All right, Madam President, Commissioners, Director Bruce, my name is Brad Sorensen. I'm the Habitat and Access Supervisor up in Cody. And I'm going to give you a brief overview of the Yellowtail Wildlife Habitat Management Area and our roles and responsibilities with this proposed BOR agreement. The Yellowtail WHMA is located 6 miles east of Lovell. It's one of our larger WHMAs in the state. We're looking at about 19,400 some acres, and it's a conglomerate of land ownership. You know, the commission owns some property out there, the Park Service owns some property, the BLM, as well as the Bureau of Reclamation. Yellowtail was established in the 1960s, mainly for waterfowl habitat, although there's lots of other critters out there that use the WHMA as well. We farm and irrigate, you know, roughly 1,000 acres out there. We do some ourselves, as well as we have a farming contractor that takes care of some as well. Primarily, we're planting grains out there, food plots, and we do have some permanent cover as well. Yellowtail's pretty known for pheasant hunting. There's a lot of people that hunt pheasants out there. Turkey hunting is becoming more and more popular, as well as, you know, deer hunting, waterfowl hunting, fishing, and wildlife viewing. So of the Yellowtail Habitat Management Area, the Game and Fish manages 18,049 federal acres through separate cooperative agreements. The commission owns only 1,375 acres out there. And you can see on the map on the right, that's a rough outline of the WHMA boundary. It's on the north and the southern sides of Highway 14A, and it's also, well, home to one of the largest riparian areas in the Bighorn Basin. So this is the BOR ownership out there. It's directly in the middle of the WHMA on the northern side of the Shoshone River. It's centrally located, so it's pretty crucial to everything we do out there. It consists of wetlands, you know, farm fields, permanent cover fields. There's some river bottoms down there as well. There's a couple ponds. And so the Game and Fish is seeking approval for a 20-year management agreement renewal with the Bureau of Reclamation. So this agreement will allow the Game and Fish to manage the Bureau of Reclamation lands. We, as a department, will be responsible for the planning, development, construction, management, operation, and maintenance activities on that BOR property. Our actions out there directly benefit the wildlife, habitat, and the public access. So this is just a couple of projects that have taken place in the past out there. On the far left, that's a irrigation pipeline project. The center there, that is us corrugating one of the fields on the Bureau of Reclamation property. And the right, that's us pouring a new concrete check for water delivery to that farm field you see. This is a wetlands restoration project that took place last year on some of this Bureau of Reclamation property. This was done in conjunction with Ducks Unlimited. On the left there, that's another pipeline project to feed those farm fields. And on the right, that's just more pictures of that wetland restoration that we did out there with Ducks Unlimited. We also have conducted quite a few prescribed fires out there with help of the BLM. The bottom left, that is a pond known as Lek Maze that we were trying to reduce the narrowleaf cattails and create some more open water. So the department recommends the commission vote to approve the 20-year management agreement between the Wyoming Game and Fish Commission and the U.S. Department of the Interior Bureau of Reclamation. And with that, I will stand for any questions.
All right, thank you, Brad. Any questions? Commissioner Masterson?
Thank you, Madam President. How long have we been managing this to date?
Madam President, Commissioner Masterson, I believe it started way back in the sixties when it was, I don't know, for a fact, but I believe since the inception of the WHA.
Wasn't last year.
No, it's been a long time.
What's the downside to doing this?
Madam President, Commissioner Masterson, I don't believe there is a downside.
Okay.
It falls right in the middle of basically the northern half of the unit. So
Sure.
if we didn't have that management ability, there'd be 600 acres in the middle of the unit that I don't know what would go on with there.
Right. And relationships with the Bureau of Reclamation good?
Yeah, yep, they're
Okay.
great.
All right. Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? All right, we have a recommendation from the department. What is the pleasure of the commission?
Madam President, I would motion to approve a 20-year management agreement with the U.S. Department of Interior Bureau of Reclamation to continue managing the BOR lands inside the Yellowtail WHMA for public recreation, wildlife, and other resource uses.
Longest motion ever. That's a good one. Do we have a second to that? All right, Commissioner My seconds. Any other questions or discussion on the motion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes. Thank you, Brad.
Yep, thank you.
All right, I think we're gonna move to item number 19, since we're ahead of schedule here. Large war fires.
Okay.
There we go.
President Lundvall, Director Bruce, members of the commission, Justin Benfit, Deputy Chief of Wildlife. I just have a really brief presentation for you guys today on just an update of the wildfire situation in Wyoming this year. So if you think about it, this will be now the third year in the past 6 years where we've had some pretty significant fire outbreaks in the late summer, early fall. If you go back to 2020, we had the Mullen Fire, which was the state's the largest wildfire in the state's history. Then you rewind the clock to this time last year, we were up here talking to you about the House Draw Fire, the Elk Fire, all those fires in the Sheridan region. And then, of course, you just heard from Mr. Kaltreiter on our restoration efforts there. Well, here we are again today. We had another significant wildfire season in Wyoming. So we'll start off with just a quick update on the largest fire this season. That Mullen Fire, which was considered the state's largest wildfire, that was 171,000-ish acres, something like that. This fire, somewhat approached that. This was a really significant fire. This burned just shy of 125,000 acres. It's east-southeast of Thermopolis. It was our largest fire this season, and this fire is predominantly in sagebrush and grassland habitats in the southern Bighorn Basin. It did impact some big game and upland game bird hunting opportunities, which we'll talk about here in a minute. And actually, I should back this up a little bit. So I would like to say when we're talking about wildfires in the state, there's really three things that the department is primarily concerned with. First of all, what are the benefits? We often talk about the impacts of wildfire, but I would be remiss if I didn't say that these wildfires in a lot of cases have an awful lot of long-term benefits to wildlife habitats. A lot of these ecosystems evolved with regular fire intervals. So we need to always keep that in mind. So what are the benefits? But also what are the impacts to wildlife habitats? So we'll talk a little bit more. Some of this will be a little bit of repetition from Todd Kaltreiter's presentation, because particularly in the Bighorn Basin, sagebrush habitats are really, really important. They're important everywhere, but they're especially important in these really dry desert ecosystems. Sagebrush is just not as resilient. We tend to have more threats from invasive annual grasses and things like that following fires. And then the third thing that we also, I guess along with that, we also want to consider what are our restoration opportunities. Again, we just heard about our aerial seeding efforts in Northeast Wyoming. That's something we'll be considering with all these as well. And then finally, we do need to understand what are the potential impacts to our hunting opportunities. So where we have big game limited quota licenses and we have these fires in the late summer and early fall, sometimes those do impact hunting opportunities, whether that be from just complete loss of habitat. Often it's due to road closures or trailhead closures from land management agencies. So those are all things we need to consider. So yeah, Red Canyon fire, biggest fire in the Southern Bighorn Basin. This fire did burn in a lot of very, very important sagebrush habitat. These habitats, again, they're, especially in this particular area, there's a fair amount of mule deer that winter in this area. There are some migratory deer that move into this area. But we also have year-round resident deer. We have a lot of upland bird opportunities. And also this is some of the more valuable sage grouse habitat in the Bighorn Basin. So this fire burned almost 88,000 acres of sage grouse core area. And that's a pretty valuable thing, again, anywhere in the state of Wyoming or the West, but especially in the Bighorn Basin. And there were 10 occupied sage grouse leks within this burn perimeter. You know, it's a different system than Northeast Wyoming, but invasive annual grasses are especially a concern in the Bighorn Basin. And that's because fire intervals historically are really far in between. And because it is so dry, just the perennial grasses, forbs, et cetera, they just tend not to get as much moisture to outcompete that cheatgrass, which can move in pretty quickly. And so the Bighorn Basin, unfortunately, is home to some of our biggest monocultures of cheatgrass. And so it's really is a concern for us. Thankfully, our folks have already initiated some coordination in this particular case with folks with the Woodland Field Office of the BLM. So some preliminary planning efforts are already underway just for invasive annual grass suppression and wildfire restoration going forward. Within this fire, like I said, it did impact some hunting opportunities. It burned the vast majority of the Kirby Creek Hunter Management Area, which is a really large hunter management area. They are still going to allow some big game opportunities this fall, thankfully. The big game occupying this area, it's really going to depend too on what kind of fall moisture we get and if there's any kind of fall green up and wildlife moving back into the area. But we are going to allow some license refund and reservation options for antelope hunt area 76, deer hunt area 37, elk area 47 and 48. So that is an opportunity that we afford through our Chapter 44 licensing regulation. The next large fire in the Bighorn Basin was the Sleeper Ranch fire. This fire is just northeast of Meeteetse. It burned almost 25,000 acres. Again, this isn't primarily sagebrush and grassland habitats. This fire did not really significantly impact big game hunting opportunities in the overall areas, although most of the Grable Hunter Management Area also burned. In this particular fire, burn scar, sage, again, like I said earlier, sagebrush is a very important part of this particular landscape. In this area, there's a lot of pronghorn use in this within this burn scar where the burn perimeter is, and it's particularly important for pronghorn, but again, also sage grouse. We had almost 19,000 acres of sage grouse core area burn in this area, with 5 occupied leks being affected. One concern our local managers have is the potential that this fire actually alters some elk distribution. There are some elk in that area, and anytime we displace elk, even temporarily, into areas they're not normally occupying that time of year, there's always potential for unforeseen conflict. There's also some coordination with the BLM for future invasive annual grass suppression that's ongoing. It's already occurred, and hopefully we'll be ready to implement some things in the spring of 26. And some of the smaller fires that happened a little bit earlier in the summer in the Bighorn Basin were southeast of Ten Sleep. These Veese and Spring Creek fires burned almost 9,000 acres combined. These fires were primarily in sagebrush, grassland, and juniper woodland habitats. So this is a little bit more dedicated mule deer country. There's certainly migratory deer that winter in this area, as well as some year-round resident deer. But the fires fortunately were not large enough in this area to impact big game hunting opportunities significantly. But these fires also had some impacts to sage grouse core area. The entire burn scar of the V's fire was actually in core, just over 5,000 acres. And here one occupied lek was encompassed by that perimeter. This is another area where we have some potential concern with altered elk distribution. But we really feel like this is a fire that's probably going to result in some long-term benefits to sagebrush habitats, therefore sage grouse, wintering mule deer, pronghorn that ease the area, and that's from reduced conifer encroachment. Conifer, you know, when we have these, whether it's junipers, cedars, limber pine, when we have conifers encroaching into these sagebrush grassland habitats, it results in a lot of competition for moisture and things like that. And some species like sage grouse are not adapted to occupying landscapes with lots of trees on them. So it's just another benefit all the way around for restoring this habitat to likely what it should be. So now when we get out of the Bighorn Basin and we move west to the fire that's still burning, this slide's now a little bit outdated. I'm sure you guys have read I'm sure folks have read in the news that this is still going. Last I knew that the Dollar Lake Fire, which it's northwest of Pinedale, it's by our Upper Green River Lakes area. I think it's now grown to just over 19,000 acres. It's still a long ways from being contained. This fire is mostly moving to the east southeast. It based on the containment lines is what I've been told, is that the fire has very little potential for moving west or northwest. So it's now getting into more rugged, mountainous, granitic country of the Wind River Range. This fire caused a little bit of panic with folks in our Pinedale region when it first torched off. It erupted pretty close to our Upper Green River Lakes elk feed ground. Thankfully, we didn't have any horses there at the time. We did have a little bit of hay, but all in all, the feed ground was spared. So thanks to the efforts of some firefighters and some good luck. This fire has impacted some big game hunting opportunities due to road closures, smoke, things like that. So our Pinedale folks felt it was best to offer the license refund and reservation options for some elk hunting in Area 95 and also bighorn sheep hunting in Area 8. This is an example of a wildfire that's likely going to be very, very beneficial for wildlife habitats in the long term. I'm still figuring out how to work these, I guess. Much of this forest needed to burn. It was largely in very decadent old conifer stands. There was a lot of beetle kill in the area. There's also an awful lot of aspen that's been encroached. So that's one of the other places where our habitat biologists really put a lot of emphasis on is rejuvenating aspen in the Rocky Mountain ecosystem. One of the biggest reasons for aspen decline in this part of the world is long-term fire suppression that's resulted in conifer encroachment, whether it's ground juniper all the way up to fir trees and aspen that dry them out, compete for resources, et cetera. And aspen responds really, really well from fire. So we feel like this will be a tremendous benefit to wildlife in the long term. And the other thing that I'm told by our managers up there is that there's a chance that depending on how this fire actually shakes out, it's going to actually really enhance some connectivity for our bighorn sheep that summer at higher elevations in the Wind River Mountains and get down to some winter range, especially around Sheep Mountain. So for bighorn sheep, we feel like this is likely going to be a real positive. And the last fire to give a quick update on is just in the southern part of Star Valley, just south of Smoot, over 4,000 acres of burn. This is a fire that's also still burning, but it's largely been contained. The same story here. The majority of this fire has been in deadfall, beetle kill, and encroached aspen. It's also been in some open winter range sagebrush habitats. Fortunately, in that part of the Wyoming range, Salt River Range, those sagebrush communities are much, much more resilient. And there were no really significant impact to hunting opportunities there. And that's all I have, and I'll stand for any questions.
Madam President, I have one. Willow, it's not in Sublette County, it's in Lincoln County. Just to,
Did you catch an error there, Commissioner Roberts?
I did, that was kind of my home turf error. It was from there. Just wanted to make sure that Lincoln wasn't same place as Sublette.
Madam President, Commissioner Roberts, I apologize for that.
Because if it's not Gillette or Casper, it's usually not on the radar screen.
Any other fire question?
Madam President, if I may, one thing I was going to mention, we had the fortune of Nissa Whitford, our sage grouse biologist, coming in. And I was asking her on the official let counts. I know a question came up for Mr. Kaltreiter about sage grouse occupancy in the house dryer burn scar. And is what Nissa informed me was there were 20 occupied leks that were affected. And of those, only 8 of them had birds on it this spring. And of those 8, the attendance was down by 40% from the previous year. So at least in year 1, some pretty significant impacts to sage grouse occupancy, at least during the breeding season.
Any other questions for Justin? Okay, thank you. All right, I think that's everything on our agenda. Any public comment before we end with announcements today? Any public comment? Anyone online? Okay, just a reminder, the Landowner of the Year banquet will be right here tonight. Cocktail hour from 5 to 6, dinner at 6. And it'll actually be held just behind us here for all the honorees and invited guests. Hope to see you back here for that tonight. If that is it from the commission, not see anything. All right. Motion to adjourn for this afternoon.
Second.
All those? All right, we're adjourned.